Hello guys, this is your friend Shinobi Addict 2.0 and we are back with a new fanfic. Which is what if Naruto became the Shinigami's successor? Part 1. And if you enjoy this fanfic then please press the like button and subscribe to my channel for more fanfic like this. And now let's start the fanfic. Night of the Kyuubi attack. Naruto. Cried Kushina and Minato together, as they saw the Kyuubi try and strike their son with its claw and prevent itself from being sealed into Naruto. Seeing that their son was in danger and without even thinking what they should do, both parents shielded their son with their bodies, where they were both impaled by the Kyuubi claw. As the two parents slowly felt their life drain away, they both made their goodbyes and slightly prayed that their son would be safe and happy. Soon after, the Kyuubi was drawn into Naruto and sealed away, after which both parents died with a smile on their faces. Not knowing that by using the Shiki Fujin, dead demon-consuming seal, Naruto life would be changed forever in a way that neither of them could have seen. After the events on the Kyuubi attack, the former Hokage, Sarutobi Hiruzen was appointed by the Fire Daimyo and the Fire Council to retake his position as the Sandaime Hokage. After which he began the slow and painful process of rebuilding the village and protecting it from its enemies and who believed that Konoha had been weakened from the Kyuubi attack. A task which was not easy, given the many lives that had been lost in the attack, the amount of damage done to the village and the fact that Konoha had lost its Hokage Namikaze Minato, who had been declared the strongest of the Hokage. As the Sandaime finished up signing several forms that would help in the rebuilding of the village, he decided that he had done enough for one day and to start again tomorrow. But before heading home, he decided to check in on someone in the hospital. As he walked through the dark streets of the village, the Sandaime gazed at the damage that had been done by the Kyuubi. As he looked, he knew that things would be hard for everyone, given the price that the village had paid to be saved, as many people had lost someone dear to them, whether they be a friend, a mother, a father, a brother, a sister, a wife, a husband or a lover. The Sandaime himself was one of those to be counted, as he too had lost someone dear to him, his wife of 20 years Bawako, who had been Kushina's midwife at the time. When the attack initially began, Sarutobi had assumed that the Kyuubi had freed itself when Kushina was giving birth. But when they investigated the secret base that Kushina had been giving birth in, they found that it was intact and found the bodies of the Anbu guards that were protecting Kushina and the body of Bawako, who all showed that they had been killed by an unknown assailant. For the past few days Sarutobi and his advisors had been pondering who could have attacked the hidden base and who could have freed the Kyuubi, and with both Kushina and Minato now dead, no one could tell them what had happened or who was responsible for the disaster, but despite no knowing who was responsible, it did not stop people from theorizing who had caused the attack. The strongest of these theories was one that the Sandaime's former rival and friend Shimura Danzo had come up with. Danzo theory was that the Uchiha clan, or at the very least a member of the clan, was responsible for the attack, as it was a known fact that their Sharingan Dujutsu allowed them to subdue and control Biju. Sarutobi of course argued against the suggestion, as he did not want to believe that the Uchiha clan was responsible. He also stated that there was no proof, along with the fact that no one other than the former clan leader Uchiha Madara had been strong enough to subdue and control Kyuubi. Sadly though, despite his arguments, the seeds of doubt and suspicion had already been planted in people, which would only grow further. Thanks to the long-held distrust that many high-ranking members in Konoha had of the clan. But despite his worries, Sarutobi decided to leave such matters for another time, as right now he had arrived at the hospital and the room he'd been walking to. The room itself was guarded by a team of Anbu, who had been assigned by the Sandaime to guard the occupant of the small room. After the Anbu saluted to their Hokage and let him pass, the Sandaime entered the room and went to a small crib that held a sleeping baby boy with spiky blonde hair and whisker-shaped birthmarks. As the old cage stared down at the sleeping baby named Naruto, a sad look appeared on his face as he pit. Young Naruto, knowing the kind of life he would be subjected to when he got older. It was especially hard for the Sandaime, since Naruto had already lost so much to begin with, as he would grow up without its parents and never know how much he meant to them. It was even harder for the Sandaime given how he would have to hide who his parents were from the general population, which included Naruto himself. For if his father's enemies learned who he was, they come after him in revenge. All the old cage could do was to create a law that stated that no one was to tell anyone outside the village or anyone of the younger generation what Naruto was. He had created this law in the hopes of not only protecting Naruto from outside forces, but as in the hope that Naruto might make friends and form bonds with children his own age. But even with this, the Sandaime feared that this wouldn't work either. Soon enough though, the Sandaime decided to head home and get some rest for the coming day, where he left the room and bid goodnight to the Anbu guards. Unaware that this would be the last time he would ever see Naruto again, or that the Anbu standing guard would not see the morning sun of the next day. Several hours later, a distance away from Konoha, as the moon in the night sky was at its peak and was just about to be covered by a large dark cloud, 4 dark silhouettes could be seen traveling at high speed through the forest. As they were traveling, the sound of a baby crying could be heard. The 4 figures had ignored the baby's cries for most of the journey, but after a while they finally had enough. "Can't you shut that brat up? Its screams are getting on my nerves, and if it keeps screaming someone could hear him," spoke one of the dark figures. "All right, I try," replied another one of the dark figures, where he tried to calm the crying Naruto. As the man carrying Naruto tried to calm him down, the moon came out of the dark cloud and shone its light down at the ground, where it revealed the Kumo headbands on the 4 shinobi. "I still don't know why we have to risk everything just to steal this kid," said one of the Kumo shinobi. "We're sealing him because he could be the very thing that would finally give us the edge we need over Konoha," replied the leader of the team. "And what makes this kid so important that he could help us do that?" asked the final member of the team. "Because he is the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi no Yoko, 9-tailed demon fox," answered the team leader, surprising his team. "But how? I thought the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi was killed after the Kyuubi broke free and attacked Konoha," said one of the shinobi. "This boy is the new one, as after the Kyuubi broke free, the Yondaime Hokage stopped it, and the only way to do that is to seal it away," replied the team leader. "But then how do we know this boy is really the new Jinchuriki for the Kyuubi?" asked the shinobi holding the crying Naruto. "You saw the guards that we killed when we entered the hospital. If this boy wasn't the Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi, then why else would they be guarding him? Besides, the hospital file we stole said the boy's name is Uzumaki, and ever since Konoha captured the Kyuubi, all their Jinchuriki have been Uzumaki. The first Jinchuriki was the Shadaime Hokage's wife Uzumaki Mito. The second Jinchuriki was Uzumaki Kushina, who was the last Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi and the wife of the Yondaime Hokage. Hence it makes perfect sense for this boy to be the new Jinchuriki of the Kyuubi, as he would be the son of both the Yondaime Hokage and the previous Jinchuriki." Quote. After hearing this, the other 3 Kumo shinobi nodded their heads in understanding, as it did make sense, since from the beginning, when the shinobi villages were formed and started creating Jinchuriki. The shinobi villages have always had the Jinchuriki of their village be of close relation with the ruling kage of their village. Once the team leader had finished explaining what they were doing, he turned to the shinobi that was carrying Naruto, who was now crying louder than ever. "Roki, can't you shut that brat up?" rounded the squad leader angrily, as Naruto's crying was serious, getting on his nerves. "I'm trying, but he just won't stop crying," replied the shinobi named Roki. "Well, just do something, as we don't know how much longer it will be before Konoha finds out that the brat is missing, and by that time I want us to be as far away as possible. For the moment that they learn that he's gone, they'll send every shinobi they have after us, to get him back, stated the team leader. As Roki continued to try and quieten Naruto down, what they didn't know was that, as Naruto was crying, he was releasing a large amount of Raryoku, spiritual power. This power had been unlocked when the Yondaime used the Shiki Fujin to summon the Shinigami and use it power to seal Th. Kyuubi and half its power inside Naruto. Although none of the Kumo shinobi could feel the immense Raryoku that Naruto was releasing. Several other things that were out there that night could sense Naruto's Raryoku and were drawn to it. As they drew closer, they let out a haunting cry, which none of the Kumo nins could hear, although baby Naruto could, which was what was frightening him so much and caused him to cry. "Let's just get out of here. He will eventually cry himself to sleep," spoke one of the Kumo shinobi, where the Rs just nodded. "Fine, let's just gagggrrrahhhhh," replied the team leader before he felt something large grab onto him from behind and pull him into the dark. When the three other Kumo nins saw their leader being pulled away by something, they all cried out their captain's name. But all they heard in reply was their captain's screams, where it suddenly stopped with a sickened crunch and a shower of blood that showered them. What the hell is going on here?" cried the Kumo nins that was holding Naruto. I don't know," replied one of the others, as he began to shake in fear, as he held his kunai in his hand. "I say let's get out of here before whatever that thing comes back and wwaaggghh," cried one of the Kumo nin, before he was pulled away screaming by another of the invisible things. "Tagata. Aahhh," cried the Kumo nin's partner before he too was grabbed and pulled away by a giant invisible arm. "Lee," cried the Kumo nin that was holding the still crying Naruto in his arms. But all the man heard was his teammates' cries of anguish, before a loud crunch was heard and a shower of blood appeared. At seeing all his teammates being killed by some kind of invisible thing or things, the frightened Roki tried to run away. But before he could, he was sent flying backwards after something big landed right in front of him. As he hit the ground, Roki dropped baby Naruto, who was still crying loudly. Roki of course quickly picked himself up, tried run away, leaving Naruto behind, but before he could get very far, he was picked up from his feet and lifted up into the air and then eaten by the large invisible beast. Once all the Kumo nins had been killed, the three other beasts came out of the dark, and unlike the four Kumo nins, baby Naruto could see the four creatures. The creatures were all humanoid in shape and were all the size of a large tree, and all had a large hole in each of their chests. But the thing that differentiated them from one another was that the white masks that they all wore were of different size and shape from each other. These creatures were called hollows, although normally these creatures wouldn't come to the shinobi world, since they feared the creatures called Biju that lived in this world, as well as the fighting force of this world, which were called shinobi and samurai, and had abilities that rivaled their mortal enemies the Shinigami and the Quincy. But even despite their fears, there were still some that would come to this world to devour human souls. As the creatures loomed over the crying baby, they began to argue over who was to eat the crying baby. As the spiritual power that Naruto was giving off was stronger than any of them had felt from a human in many years. "He's not much to look at and he's very noisy with his constant screams," spoke one hollow whose mask was the shape of an ape and had arms like one. "They're barely even enough of him to even munch," said another hollow whose mask took the shape of a bird with a long beak and had wings on his arms that allowed him to fly and had finger-like claws. "Maybe, but the spiritual power that is emanating from him is stronger than any that we've felt in his world," spoke the hollow wearing a tiger-shaped mask, and had large claw-like hands. "So which of us shall have the pleasure of devouring him?" asked the hollow with a bear-like mask. For the next few minutes the four hollows continued to argue amongst themselves over who was devour Naruto. After much arguing, it was decided that the tiger-masked hollow, who was the strongest of the group, would eat Naruto. But just as the tiger was about to pick baby Naruto up, there was a sudden blur of orange, and the next thing the tiger-masked hollow knew, his arm was severed and a shower of blood exploded from the stub that was once his arm. "Aarrrrrraaggghh. My arm!" cried the hollow in pain. After roaring in pain, the tiger-masked hollow looked around for whomever or whatever had severed his arm. The four hollows quickly found the perpetrator, who was standing on a large tree branch on a nearby tree. The mysterious person was clearly a woman by the shape of her body. Her attire consisted of an orange overshirt with two white straps on each shoulder, a large beige sash around her waist, black stretch pants and long beige wrist warmers, secured by bands, and long beige leg warmers with brown light shoes. The mysterious woman also wore a beige neck warmer, which she pulled up to cover her face, which hid her identity. Well, here I was taking a casual night run and I find a group of hollows attack a helpless baby, spoke the mysterious woman. Who the hell are you? Roared the hollow with the ape-like mask. Me? Well, I'm just your everyday good Samaritan, who can't stand to see cute innocent little babies being attacked by the likes of you, replied the woman. Well, whoever you are, you're going to die, roared the ape-masked hollow, as he charged at the woman with his fist raised. Seeing this, the woman remained perfectly calm and waited for the large hollow to come at her. Just as the hollow was about to hit her, the woman disappeared and the hollow instead hit the tree that she had been standing on a moment ago and completely destroyed it. But before the hollow realized what had happened, the mysterious woman reappeared again right in front of him, where she then smashed her fist right in the hollow's face, completely destroying its mask and killing the hollow. Before the other two hollows could even react to what happened to their fellow hollow, the mysterious woman disappeared and reappeared again in front of the hollow with the bear-shaped mask. Before said hollow could even react, let alone defend himself, the woman delivered a powerful roundhouse kick to the hollow's face, destroying its mask and killing the hollow. Seeing that two of their brethren had been destroyed, the two remaining hollows became enraged, where the hollow with the bird-shaped hollow mask shot out its claw fingertips, which flew towards the woman at staggering speed. But when the claws hit the woman, they passed right through her, revealing that she was an after-image, where as soon as the hollow saw this, the mysterious woman reappeared right above the hollow and delivered a powerful leg drop down on the creature head, which shattered its mask, killing it instant. Seeing that last of his brethren being killed by the unknown woman, and knowing that he stood no chance of winning due to the woman severing his arm, the tiger-masked hollow decided to at least deny the woman her victory, by killing Naruto. If you care so much about this brat, then try and save him from this, roared the hollow leader, where he raised his one remaining hand and went to crush the crying Naruto with it. But just when he was about to crush Naruto, he suddenly felt his hand being stopped by something, where when he looked down, he saw that the mysterious woman had once again reappeared and blocked the hollow's fist, protecting Naruto from being crushed. But what shocked the hollow the most was that the woman had stopped his clawed fist with one hand. Impossible. How can you be so strong? Cried the enraged hollow, as he struggled to crush the mysterious woman and the crying baby, but found he could not, as the woman would not budge. Before the hollow could do anything else, a small blue glow appeared between the woman and the hollow's hands, aft, which the hollow's arm blew up into piece. Aaggghhhh. Who the hell are you? Roared the furious hollow in pain as he was now armless. At this the woman just smirked behind her neck warmer and replied, like I said, I'm just your friendly good Samaritan. After which she then jumped into the air and delivered a powerful upward kick, right to the hollow's chin, causing its mask to shatter, killing it instantly like the others. Once the last of the hollows had been destroyed, the woman then went over to the still crying Naruto, and gently picked him up. P and removed her neck warmer. When she removed the neck warmer around her face, the woman revealed herself to be an attractive dark-skinned woman with purple hair, which was tied up in a ponytail. There, little guy, it's all right, you're safe now, said the woman kindly, as she smiled down at the crying boy, when his blue eyes met with her golden eyes. The young boy calmed down and even smiled up at the woman, as if knowing that he was safe with this woman. Said woman was of course no ordinary person, she was in fact former captain of Squad 2 and former commander-in-chief of the On Mitsukido Punishment Force, Shihoin Yoruichi, who was also the former head of the Shihoin clan, one of the 4 great noble houses in the Soul Society. Ever since she rescued her friends Urahara Kazuki and Tsukubishi Tessai from being punished by Central 36 and saved the 8 hollow-feed Shinigami from being executed. Yoruichi had been in hiding in between the Soul Society, the world of the living, and its parallel, Area 30, otherwise known by most Shinigami as the Shinobi world. This world had been an oddity to the Soul Society for many years, where the people of this world developed unique UE abilities that rivaled that of the Shinigami. A power which was later dubbed by the people of the world as chakra. The power itself involved the people using their physical energy in combination with their spiritual energy. By combining these two things, it allowed the shinobi to create unique techniques which were on par with any Kido, spirit way, spell. Although when the people of this world died and entered the Soul Society, they did not possess the same abilities that they had in their world. This led the Soul Society top scientists to believe that the people of this world could only use chakra when they were alive, due to it requiring both physical energy and spiritual energy. But even despite this, the unique power of the shinobi caused much concern and interest in the Soul Society. As many believed that with these abilities, the shinobi could become quite useful in the Soul Society war against the Hollows or become dangerous threat to the Soul Society itself. The Soul Society concern of the shinobi world grew even more when creatures called Biju appeared in the shinobi world, which were made out of chakra and could not be destroyed even with Kido and Zanpakuto and could only be sealed away. But even despite these concerns, the Soul Society began to experiment with the people of the shinobi world in the hope that they could somehow replicate the shinobi abilities. For several years the Soul Society researchers experimented on the people of this world, but all their attempts in replicating the shinobi powers failed. Also during the course of these experiments an unexpected side effect appeared where several genetic abnormalities appeared in some of the people that were experimented on. These abnormalities continued on through the descendants of the people that were experimented on by the Soul Society, where they were later became known as Kekkei Genkei, bloodline limit, by the people of the shinobi world. After seeing the result of the experiments and not wanting to do any more harm to the world than what had already been done, plus the fact that hollows rarely entered the world, Central 36 decided that any traveling to the shinobi world would highly restricted, where all senkaimon that led to the shinobi world would be sealed off, and that only those with special permission given by Central 36 or the head captain could enter the world. Although what neither the head captain or Central 36 knew was that Yoruichi knew of a secret way to get to the shinobi world, and given that fact that Shinigami rarely entered or monitored the world, it was the perfect place for her to hide in from time to time. Yoruichi especially liked the shinobi world as she found the shinobi that lived in it interesting, as she found their style of fighting very familiar with her own. She also found the shinobi to be fun to mess with, where she would practice her stealth skills, by sneaking into shinobi villages and taking something, so to have the shinobi chase after her. This of course allowed Yoruichi to amuse herself, while at the same time keeping her skills from getting too dull over the years. Naturally none of the shinobi that attacked her or chased after her could catch her, but there were 2 exceptions, which actually made her little games interesting. The first was a man named A, who used a technique involving lightning and would cover his body with it and use it to enhance his strength and speed. The other person was a shinobi named Namikaze Minato, who actually caught up to her once when she was being chased by several Konoha shinobi. He had caught up to her by using a technique he called the Hiraishin no Jutsu, Flying Thunder God technique, which allowed him to teleport instantly from one place to another that had one of his special kunai or his special seals on it. Obviously, even after Minato and caught up to her, Yoruichi had still gotten away, but even still, she had been impressed with Minato's skill and the technique he used and admitted that he was very impressive human. As she looked down at baby Naruto, she could not help but be slightly reminded of Minato, where Naruto had the same hair color and clear blue eyes, and wondered if Naruto was perhaps related to him. It was then as she looked down at him that Yoruichi noticed the name, Naruto, embroidered on the baby's blanket. So your name is Naruto. That's an interesting name. One of your parents must have really loved ramen a lot, by naming you after a ramen topping. That or they wanted to call you something fearsome like a maelstrom, spoke Yoruichi with a smile as she held the boy and smiled down at him. At this, baby Naruto just gurgled, as if laughing at what Yoruichi had said. As Yoruichi continued to stare at the baby in her hand, she couldn't help but marvel at the raryoku that baby Naruto was emanating, since it was surprisingly strong for a human, let alone an infant, to have. Since from what she was sensing, he had a great deal of power in him and it would only grow over time. Soon enough though, Yoruichi decided that she should bring Naruto back home, as she guessed that Naruto was obviously from Konoha. Since Konoha was not too far away from here, plus the shinobi that had Naruto had the symbol Kumo on him, which was a rival of Konoha. Not to mention given how much Naruto reminded her of Minato, whom she had heard became the new leader of Konoha. She guessed that Minato was his father, or at the very least some kind of close relative. Him and Kumo had kidnapped Naruto, in an attempt to use him as some kind of political hostage. After a few minutes of using Shunpo, flash steps, Yoruichi arrived at Konoha, where she snuck into the village without anyone noticing and decided to head to the Hokage's mansion and leave Naruto there, knowing he'd be safe there till morning, where Minato would find him. But before she could leave Naruto in the office, she suddenly heard several people coming towards the office. Not wanting to be caught, Yoruichi quickly jumped back through the open window that she had entered through with Naruto and hid behind the wall next to the window. As soon as Yoruichi had jumped out of the office, the lights of the office lit up and a middle-aged man, wearing official-looking robe, entered the office. Closely following the man were three other people who looked to be about the man age entered the room. Along with them were three more men, who were wearing white-colored hooded trench coats and porcelain animal masks. As Yoruichi listened in on the people, she could tell that they were extremely angry and worried about something. How could this have happened? Spoke the middle-aged man wearing official-looking robes as sat behind the desk of the Hokage's office. Obviously, the boy was stolen by a group of highly skilled infiltrators, as they were able to enter the village, kill the men we had guarding the boy and left the village with him without alerting our patrols, spoke a man with half his face covered in bandages. Do we have any clue as to who exactly took the boy? Asked a middle-aged woman, who was the only woman in the group. None, I'm afraid, as whoever took young Uzumaki covered their tracks well and left no clues as to who they were, replied one of the masked men, whose mask was in the shape of a boar. This is unacceptable, Captain, spoke the other middle-aged man, who wore glasses. Apologize, Homura-sama, but given the Kyuubi's recent attack, it has been difficult in keeping the village secure. As many of our shinobi have been injured from the attack, and as you know, we had to take down the Kanshi Shisudamu sensing system due to the power requirements. Hence there are many holes in our defenses, which an enemy can sneak through undetected, replied another of the masked men, who wore a road-shaped mask. The matter as to how they got in is of little matter right now, since we need to focus our full attention on getting Naruto back as quickly as possible, spoke the middle-aged robed man, where at this everyone else in the room nodded in agreement. Upon which the robed man turned to the man wearing the cat-shaped mask. Captain, I want you and the other captains to gather your best people and have them ready to move out in 1 hour. Also I want you to go to Hyuga Hiyashi, Inazuka Sume and Aburame Shibi and inform them of the situation and tell the we need their best people to help us track down whoever stole Naruto, as quickly as possible. At this the 3 masked captains all nodded their heads in understanding and disappeared in puff of smoke. Once the 3 captains disappeared, the middle-aged woman suddenly spoke. This is a disaster. It is not enough that our village was attacked by the Kyuubi and we lost not only many of our shinobi and Yondaime Hokage, but we've now lost the Jinchuriki for the Kyuubi. This would never have happened if you had agreed to my proposal and let me take the child, spoke the bandaged-faced man. If I had done that, Danzo, you would have trained Naruto to become a mindless killing machine and he would have become no better than a weapon. That is what Jinchuriki are. They are living weapons used by us as deterrents against our enemies, as well as to show off our might. To think otherwise is to be naive, Sarutobi, replied Danzo. Naruto is not a weapon. He is just an innocent child and we owe it to both Kushina and Minato to care for Naruto, after they sacrificed themselves to save this village. To do otherwise would be an insult to their memory, as Minato said so himself before he died, that Naruto was to be hailed as a hero for what he was, responded the Sandaime. Before Danzo could respond to Sarutobi's comment, the middle-aged woman spoke up. Hiruzen, Danzo is correct, as the boy is a Jinchuriki and therefore is a living weapon for our village. But how the boy is raised is not the issue here. The fact of the matter is, he has been stolen from this village, most likely by one of the other villages, and without him and given the losses we've already suffered, our village is extremely vulnerable to attack from any one of our enemies. I am aware of that, Kaharu, but what else would you have me do? All that we can do right now is send out search parties, and hopefully find Naruto before it's too late, spoke the Sandaime, after which he and his advisors continued to discuss what they should do. As the 4 elder shinobi continued to talk about what they should do next, Yoruichi decided to take her leave, as she had heard enough. From her time in the shinobi world, Yoruichi had seen the rise of the shinobi nations and the creation of Jinchuriki, and how they were treated. Naturally, she did not like what she saw and did not believe that Naruto deserved to be treated as such, hence she decided to take Naruto somewhere else, where he could have a better life. After traveling for several hours using Shunpo, Yoruichi came across a small village that was far from Konoha. Naruto had slept through the majority of the trip, hence Yoruichi had no trouble with him. When she arrived at the village, Yoruichi was certain that Naruto would be safe here, where she then left Naruto at the doorstep of a small house, but as soon as she left, Naruto woke up and began to cry. Seeing this, Yoruichi went over and picked him up so to calm him, and as soon as she did, Naruto stopped crying and smiled at Yoruichi and reached out towards her with his small arms, as if indicating that he wanted to stay with her. Yoruichi at first tried to ignore Naruto's silent pleas, but when she looked down at him and he gave her the infamous puppy dog look, which could bring down even the mightiest of Shinigami, she broke. Whether it was because of the puppy dog look that Naruto was giving her, or because of some form of maternal instincts that Naruto seemed to bring out in her. But whatever the reason, it was then and there that Yoruichi decided that she would give Naruto the life he deserved. After which, she then disappeared into the night, carrying her newly adopted son. 8 years later, Karakura town. Ka-chan, what are we doing here? Asked an 8-year-old Naruto, as he held his adopted mother's hand, as they walked down the crowded streets of Karakura town. Well, we're here, Naru-chan, to visit your uncle Kazuki. Do you remember me mentioning him? Replied Yoruichi, as she smiled on at her adopted son, who was wearing an orange shirt, with a small black spiral along with black pants and gray runners. Yoruichi herself was currently in Ikigai, which she had gotten off Urahara right after she took in Naruto. Currently, the dark-skinned woman wore a pair of short white shorts, which just stopped below her thighs along with a matching white zip-up jacket, which showed her midriff and had its zip lowered, showing her orange bra underneath. 1. The outfit of course gained the attention of many male passerby who couldn't help but stare at the exotic woman. Several men of course got slapped on the back of their heads by their angry girlfriends or wives who were with them, after catching them staring. G or her. Said women then glared angrily at the former Squad 2 captain, who were either appalled that Yoruichi would wear such an outfit with her son or were jealous that Yoruichi had such a figure after having a child. Yoruichi of course only smirked at seeing all this, as she loved playing these kind of games, as it showed that she still got it. Naruto on the other hand remained oblivious to the whole thing, where he just continued to walk on with his mother. As the two continued on their journey to Urahara store, Yoruichi glanced down at her adopted son and smiled at him. The past 8 years had been a bit different from what Yoruichi was used to, as she couldn't travel as freely as she usually could, and had to take a lot more care when traveling. When she took in Naruto, she was of course at a complete lose at what to do, such as feeding, clothing, waking up at all hours of the night and worse of all nappy changing. But eventually, after much trial and error, everything worked out in the end. During the 8 years, Yoruichi had been traveling with Naruto between the world of the living and the shinobi world. This was to make sure that those from the shinobi world, who would be looking for Naruto, and the Soul Society, who be looking for Yoruichi, would have trouble finding them. This of course made things difficult for Naruto in making friends, since it was often just Yoruichi and him and they were always on the move. But even still he didn't mind, since as far as he was concerned his mother was the only thing he need. She even taught him how to read and write along with maths other things. Money was of course not a problem, since after adopting Naruto, Yoruichi made a quick visit to the Soul Society and borrowed a sizable amount for them to live comfortable lives with no trouble. When Naruto got older, Yoruichi started training Naruto in hand-to-hand fighting as well as to train up his body. Naruto loved training since his mother always made it fun, like by turning endurance training into a game of tag and stealth training into hide-and-seek. Yoruichi also taught Naruto some things in the shinobi arts, since not only were the shinobi abilities powerful in their own right, but she believed that it was important for him to know where he came from. Teaching him of course had been slightly difficult since she could do it herself. But even still, she knew enough about chakra from her time in the shinobi to know how it worked and how it was used. When she started to teach Naruto about chakra, Naruto had trouble using it, for not only did Naruto possess an extremely high amount of Raryoku, spiritual power, but an equally high amount of chakra, hence he had trouble using it. Eventually though, Naruto's control and use of his chakra got better, where he learned how to use it henge transformation, kawarimi no jutsu, body replacement tekken, IQ, to walk up a tree using his chakra. But what Yoruichi had not figured out was why Naruto had such large reserves of Raryoku, such strong Ryutsu, spiritual pressure, which he emanated from time to time, although couldn't use it. This was why Yoruichi was heading for Urahara shop, since she was certain that if anyone could figure what was wrong with Naruto, and why he even had such high levels of Raryoku, it would be Kazuki. Eventually they arrived at Urahara's shop, but when Naruto saw the store he was far from impressed. "Is this it, Ka-chan?" asked Naruto. "Yes, it is Naru-chan," replied the dark-skinned woman, where she then opened the door and entered the shop with Naruto. As soon as they entered the store, they were greeted by 2 men who came out from the back of the store. The first was a tall, muscular, lightly tan-skinned man with cornrowed-shaped hair and a large handlebar mustache, which was connected to his long sideburns. His attire consists of a white muscle shirt with regular pants and a blue apron, and wore a pair of rectangular-shaped glasses. The second was a tall, light-skinned man with gray eyes, messy light blonde hair that had strands framing the sides of the face and hanging between his eyes and chin stub. BLE. He wore bucket-shaped hat with green and white stripes. He also wore a dark green shirt and pants, topped with a black coat with a white diamond pattern along its bottom half, along with traditional Japanese wooden sandals. As soon as the two men saw Yoruichi and Naruto, the tall blonde-haired man cried, "Yoruichi!" before running over to greet his oldest and dearest friend in a tight hug. "Greetings, Yoruichi-sama. It is good to see you again," greeted the other man, as he slowly walked over to Yoruichi and the others. "It's good to see you to Kazuki, Tessai," replied Yoruichi with a smile, after Urahara let him go. "I'm assuming that this is your son Naruto," spoke Tessai as he turned to the small blonde boy, who was sticking close to his adoptive mother, as he was slightly intimidated by the large man. "Yes, say hello to your uncle Tessai, Naruto," replied Yoruichi. "Hello," said Naruto nervously, where the large name Tessai gave a brief smile and patted Naruto gently on the head. "Hello, young man, it's very nice to meet you." Quote, "Well, aren't you the handsome young man? Here, would you like a lollipop?" said Urahara as he held out a large lollipop. "It's quite nice, as it's raspberry flavor." Seeing the lollipop, Naruto slowly reached out to it and took it and put it in his mouth. "Naruto, what do you say to your uncle Kazuki?" said Yoruichi, as she looked down at her adopted son. "Thanks, Mr. Sandal Hat." Yoruichi just smirked at Naruto's nickname for Kazuki, while Tessai chuckled slightly. Even Urahara himself smiled at the name, as he didn't mind being called that, where he then told Naruto he was welcome. Once the introductions were all done, Tessai led Naruto to one of the side rooms, where there was a television, and turned it on and allowed Naruto to watch some animes. Once Naruto was occupied, Tessai made some tea and brought it to the main back room, where Kazuki and Yoruichi were sitting and waiting for him. As Tessai poured the tea into their cups, Kazuki decided to start things off. "So Yoruichi, do you care to tell what is going on? When you first wrote to me asking for the Gigai, your letter was rather vague to say the least, not to mention surprising when you said you had adopted a baby boy." "Yay, I beat it was," laughed Yoruichi, as she only wished she could have seen Kazuki's face when he read the letter. "So tell me, why is it that you need to see us, Yoruichi?" asked Yoruichi. "I'm here because I need your help, Kazuki, and it involves Naruto," Yoruichi answered. "Is there something wrong with the young man?" asked Tessai. "Well, not exactly, but Naruto isn't a normal boy, as he is from Area 36, or as you both know it as, the Shinobi world," explained Yoruichi, which surprised the two men. "The Shinobi world? Well, now that is certainly interesting," commented Kazuki, as he scratched his chin and had a thoughtful look on his face. "But how did you enter the Shinobi world? I was under the impression that all Senkaimon, world penetration gate, that led to the Shinobi world were sealed off," stated Tessai. "Oh, I know a few back doors, in and out of places," answered Yoruichi with a knowing smile. Well, this is interesting, but there's something you're not telling us, Yoruichi, such as why did you even take Naruto in? No offense, but you're not the type of person to simply take in a child for just any reason, and what do you expect me to do?" stated Urahara. At hearing this, Yoruichi just smirked before replying, "Tell me, Kazuki, what can you tell me about the creatures called Biju?" Quote, "Well, back when I was first setting up Technological Development Department, I came across some of the records on the Shinobi world. From what I understand, they are creatures made out of the same energy that can only be found in the Shinobi world. This energy, if I am not mistaken, is called chakra, and according to the records, these Biju's power is on par with Ameno's, although their intelligence is no greater than that of a wild beast, not unlike Jillian," answered Kazuki before continuing. There are about 9 of them now, although originally there was only one, which the people of the shinobi world called the Jubi. But it was eventually sealed in a human, who was the byproduct of one of the Soul Society experiments on some of the people of the shinobi world and gained what they call a bloodline. There he used his power to seal creature within him. When the Soul Society learned of this, they tried to capture the man in hope of learning more about his power and to study the Jubi. But remarkably, the man proved too powerful, where he defeated the 5 captains, the dozen or so lieutenants that were sent to capture him. It was because of this that Central 46 decided to employ an arm's reach policy with the shinobi world, due to their concern of the power of these bloodlines. Later, this concern of bloodlines would help Central 46 decision in ordering that the shinobi world being sealed off. But still, from what I understand, when this man who sealed the Jubi in him was dying, he used his power to divide the creature's power into 9 other creatures, creating the 9 other Biju. To prevent the Jubi from being released or allowing anyone else such as the Soul Society from capturing it and using it for their own mean. After hearing Kazuki recount on what he knew about the Biju, Yoruichi could only smile, as there were very few things that Kazuki did not know about. Well, since you already know that much about them, I guess it saves us some time, since to put it simply, Naruto is like that man who are called Jinchuriki in the shinobi world, said Yoruichi, where she then went on to explain what she knew about Jinchuriki and how they came to be. After hearing all this, Kazuki mulled over with what he had learned, where he had to admit, it was a rather interesting way of harnessing the power of the Biju. Since by placing it in a child, they can train the child in using the Biju powerful effectively and to its full potential, while at the same time making sure the child is loyal to the leader, by have the child be related to them. He also now understood why Yoruichi felt the desire to take Naruto in, given how Jinchuriki were regarded by most people in their own villages. What Biju does Naruto-kun have? Asked bucket hat wearing man. He has the Kyubi no Yoko, 9-tailed fox, the strongest of the 9 Biju, replied Yoruichi. Although as interesting as this is, Yoruichi, I still do not see why you require my help, said Kazuki. I'm here because I need your help. Since when I first found Naruto, I sensed a large amount of spiritual pressure coming from him, and he can see me without my Gigai. HHMMMIC, so you want me to examine him to see why he has such a large amount of spiritual power in him, ans. Word Kazuki, where Yoruichi just nodded. Well then, said Kazuki as he put his folded fan down on the table, let's get started, shall we? A few days later. For the next couple of days, Kazuki used his machines to examine Naruto, both inside and out, and gathered as much data as he could, while at the same time making sure that none of the examination hurt Naruto. He had also studied the information he had received from Yoruichi about chakra, how it worked, and about bloodlines and shinobi clan, which she had attainted from her visits to the shinobi world from shinobi villages. Once Kazuki had finished his examination on Naruto, he brought his results to Yoruichi. Well, Yoruichi, I've to say, your son Naruto is quite the anomaly even for his own people, replied Kazuki with an amused smile. What do you mean? Asked the dark-skinned woman. Well, it seems your son has 3 sources of power. The first is his own chakra, the second chakra that comes from the Kyubi, which is similar in some ways to a hollow's power. The third power is his spiritual power, and I must say it quite large for a boy, let alone a normal human, to have. Yoruichi only nodded at this, as she already knew all of this. Yes, I'm aware of that, Kazuki, but what I'm wondering about is why Naruto has so much spiritual power, and is able to use spiritual pressure. Well, I've an answer for that. You see, as I was performing Naruto-kun's tests, I hacked into the archive storage systems of the Technological Development Department without Kwatsuchi-kun knowing. A rather impressive feat if I do say so myself, replied Kazuki, as he opened his fan and laughed to himself at his own brilliance. Kazuki. What did you find? Asked the annoyed Yoruichi. Now Yoruichi, calm down, I was getting there, replied Urahara, as he tried to calm his friend down as shish. He could be rather impatient at times. As I was saying, after I hacked into the archives, I started to look over the records kept by the head of the scientific team, who performed the experiments on people from the shinobi world. Now, as you know, the original purpose of the scientific team was to study the phenomenon that was chakra in the hopes of replicating the shinobi's abilities. But after seeing their attempts fail, the head of the scientific team, Nagao Sonosaka, attempted to go another direction. By combining a chakra with a Shinigami, in the hopes of creating a Shinigami-shinobi hybrid, explained Kazuki. When Yoruichi heard this, she was naturally surprised at someone from the Soul Society trying something like that. But even still, she wondered how this affected Naruto, since this all happened long before he was born. But before she could ask, Kazuki continued with his explanation. Now, naturally, when the Central 46 learned of this, they immediately halted the experiments and ordered that information on the experiments and on the shinobi world to be sealed away, and that all the Senkaimon leading to the shinobi world be cut off. But not everyone followed with this order, explained Kazuki. What do you mean? Asked Yoruichi. Well, it seems that the head of the scientist team did not agree with Central 46's decision and made a copy of all his team data. After which he then fled the Soul Society to the shinobi world to continue his research. Quote, did they ever find him? Oh, they did, but according to the reports about him, when the Soul Society found him, he wasn't exactly himself anymore. Huh, said Yoruichi. Well, according to what I've learned, it seems that Nagao first attempted to make a shinobi hybrid by using himself as the test subject, since there were no other Shinigami with him to test on. His experiments, although, had an unfortunate side effect, where he inadvertently mutated himself, said Urahara. Once the Soul Society found him and saw what he had become, they decided to banish him into a pocket dimension that lies between the Soul Society and the shinobi world, to remain there for all time. So you're saying that Naruto's spiritual power is a result of Nagao's experiments, spoke Yoruichi. I believe so, replied Kazuki. But how is that possible? All of that happened long before Naruto or his parents were even born, stated the former Shihoin heiress. Well, according to the data that the Soul Society confiscated after they caught Nagao, it seems that he was very close to actually succeeding in creating a shinobi hybrid, where after his failed attempt to combine chakra with a Shinigami, he instead attempted alter a human's body so that it could use both chakra and Raryoku. He partially succeeded in doing so, where some members of a clan of shinobi who he had experimented on showed signs in having high levels of spiritual power. Furthermore, the members of the clan seemingly possessed a much greater lifespan than a normal person. Quote, you mean Naruto's birth mother clan, the Uzumaki, stated Yoruichi, which Kazuki confirmed with a nod. Yes, but as I said, he only partially succeeded, since despite possessing spiritual power, Naruto's ancestors couldn't use it, as there was some kind of block that prevented them from accessing it. But before Nagao could solve the problem, the Soul Society found him and halted his experiments, answered Kazuki. But if that's true, how did Naruto unlock his spiritual energy? Asked Yoruichi. I'm not entirely sure, answered Kazuki, but when I studied Naruto-kun's seal, I found trace amounts of foreign spiritual energy in it. Meaning, well, if I were to guess, I would say that another Shinigami sent some of his or her power into Naruto's body, where it unlocked his dormant spiritual energy, not unlike a key opening the door, replied Kazuki. But that doesn't make any sense. Why would another Shinigami be there? As there's no way they could have known I was in the shinobi world. Not to mention, why would they even send some of their spiritual energy into Naruto's body? Said Yoruichi. I'm afraid I cannot answer that, answered Kazuki honestly. After remaining silent for several minutes, Yoruichi decided to ask Urahara for one other favor. Kazuki, if you don't mind, there is one other thing I want to ask you to do, which is also the other reason why I came here. And what is that? Asked the curious Kazuki. I want you to help Naruto to gain the powers of a Shinigami, Yoruichi stated. Upon hearing this, both Kazuki and Tessai eyes widened slightly in surprise. Yoruichi-sama, are you sure you want to do this? As you know, there are only two processes for a normal human being in become a Shinigami, said Tessai. I am as it's only a matter of time before Aizen eventually learns about Naruto, as Naruto is the first ever Shinigami shinobi hybrid and has one of the Biju within him. If Naruto is to have any chance of defending himself against Aizen or Hollows who would be after his high spiritual power, then he'll need the power of a Shinigami to do it. Besides, Naruto has stated several times to me that he wishes to become a Shinigami to fight Hollows and trust me when I say this, once he's set his mind to something he won't give up on it. Hummed Kazuki. You might be right, Yoruichi, as Naruto-kun could indeed be a powerful ally or enemy to Aizen if he learns to control his powers correctly. But how exactly do you want Naruto to gain the powers of a Shinigami? Was there are only two methods for a living person to do so, stated Urahara. I want you to use the method you came up with, Kazuki, replied Yoruichi. Are you sure about that, Yoruichi, as you know how dangerous that could be? I am aware of the risks, but I know Naruto can make it. He's stronger than you might think. I don't doubt that, but wouldn't the other method be easier? Kazuki replied. No, this way is better, as if I give Naruto some of my own power, it will limit him. By using your method he will gain his own powers and be able to use his own vast reserves, answered Yoruichi. Very well then, if you're sure of this, we'll begin tomorrow, replied Kazuki. The several days later, after deciding to help Naruto gain the powers of a Shinigami, Yoruichi and Kazuki began Naruto's training, where they separated Naruto's soul from his body and began his endurance training so he could use his spirit form. For the next 2 days Yoruichi attacked Naruto, forcing to run and dodge all her attacks and run all around the underground training room. Fortunately, thought the training wasn't too hard for Naruto, since he was used to this kind of training with his mother, when training in hand-to-hand combat. Once Naruto had passed the first phase of the training, they began the next phase where they cut Naruto's chain of fate and bind Naruto's arms. After which they placed him and Tessai together in a large pit so to allow the encroachment to begin uninterrupted. This was of course the part that Yoruichi was most worried about, since if things didn't go right then her son would turn into a hollow. As the hours passed by, Yoruichi continued to watch over Naruto from the edge of the pit, waiting to see what happens. Nervous? Asked Kazuki, as he sat next to his oldest friend, who was biting her nails as she looked down at her adopted son. A habit she had developed as soon as the second phase of the exam began. Wouldn't you be? Yoruichi replied. Probably. But remember, this was your idea, answered Kazuki, as he brought his folded fan up to his mouth. I know, responded Yoruichi, and that's what makes it so difficult, as I'm risking his life. Quote. Seeing the worried look of Yoruichi's face, Kazuki placed his hand on Yoruichi's right shoulder. Don't worry. Like you said, Naruto-kun is strong. He make it, assured Kazuki with a reassuring smile, where Yoruichi just smiled in response. So how long has it been? Asked the dark-skinned woman. About 69 hours. There's still time that this may work, answered Kazuki, where as soon as he said this, they suddenly heard Naruto starting to scream in pain and an immense amount of spiritual pressure coming from him. Naruto! Cried Yoruichi with worry, as she saw his chain fall apart and a hole appear in his chest, along with a hollow mask forming around the blonde boy's face. Seeing this, Yoruichi was about to jump down to her son, but before she could, Kazuki grabbed hold of her arm and stopped. Kazuki, what are you doing? Let me go. I have to help Naruto. Cried Yoruichi. You can't, Yoruichi. He's gone too far to you to stop this, said Urahara. You can't expect me to just stand here and watch my son become a hollow. Rounded the purple-haired woman. Listen, Yoruichi. I know you're worried about him, but there's still a chance this can work. Look at him. Normally when a person changes into a hollow, their body explodes and changes into a hollow. But that isn't happening with him. His mask is forming first and his body staying intact. That means he's fighting the change, and he could still become a Shinigami. We just have to wait. At hearing this, Yoruichi just gripped her left hand tightly to form a fist and started down at her adopted so. In worry. Naruto. Inside Naruto's inner world. Soon after his transformation began, Naruto blanked out from the pain, after which he began to hear several voices saying out his name. Eventually he found himself on a large white beach with palm trees behind him and a vast open sea in front of him. As he looked around, the scenery reminded Naruto of a place he and his mother went when they were on holiday. But when he looked up, instead of seeing clear blue sky, there were dark rumbling storm clouds. Where am I? Naruto asked out loud as he looked around. As soon as Naruto has asked this, a massive surge of water erupted into the air, where Naruto then heard a massive roar. The water then formed up and took the shape of a gigantic, serpentine dragon made out of water, with large wings and glowing red eyes. At seeing this, Naruto immediately took a step back in shock, but before he could fully comprehend what was happening, he then heard a massive screech-like cry, coming from above him. When he looked up, Naruto saw a gigantic beautiful white bird flying above him, where it slowly flew down and landed on the beach to Naruto's left side, a few meters away from him. Once the giant white bird landed on the beach, Naruto suddenly heard a loud crackle of thunder. After which there was a sudden flash of light, and large bolt of lightning struck the ground to Naruto's right a few feet away from him. As soon as the flash of light was gone, Naruto saw a tall man with short black hair, with an eye patch over his right eye standing in the very spot where the lightning bolt struck. The man wore dark samurai-like armor with a short sleeve, high-collar blue coat over the armor and carried a long katana on his left hip side. Who? What the hell are you guys? Where am I? Asked Naruto, who didn't know what to make of this situation. Is that all you can say, brat? Tisk. I don't believe this. He doesn't even know who we are. Spoke the samurai-like man as he folded. As if he were annoyed that Naruto didn't know who they were. That's enough, Reo, Thunder King. The boy is young and is only just coming into his power. He could not hear our voice until now, spoke the giant white bird in a clearly feminine voice, although when she said the samurai-like man's name Naruto heard nothing. Kochi, Spring Wind, is correct, Reo. It is not his fault. Besides, we do not have time to argue amongst ourselves right now, said the water dragon in a deep echoing voice, where like before, when the water dragons said their names Naruto heard nothing. Tisk. Fine, whatever. I'm just saying, that's it, rather pathetic, that he doesn't even know who we are. Who the hell are you guys? What are you? Asked Naruto. My name is Watatsumi, water god, replied the water dragon before turning to the white bird. This is Kochi and the one in front of you is Reo. As to what we are, to put it simply, we're a part of you. We're one and yet we are separate from one another. Huh. What did you say? I didn't hear your names, and what do you mean? Asked Naruto, not hearing their names or really understanding what Watatsumi was talking about. See, like I told you, he can't even hear our names, it's pathetic. Scoffed Reo. Hey, who the hell are you calling pathetic, Hitotsu Tem, bastard Cyclops? Cried Naruto as he glared at Reo. After hearing what Naruto called him, Reo walked over to Naruto, and glared directly at the young blonde. What did you just call me, you little brat? Asked Reo with a dangerous tone and glare that would have many others with her. But Naruto wasn't like most people, as he wouldn't back down when insulted, no matter who they were. You heard me, Tem, and if you want a fight, then I'm more than ready. I'll kick your all over this place, declared Naruto as he glared back at Reo. For a moment or two, Naruto and Reo just glared at one another, but soon after Reo stopped glaring and smirked at Naruto. Huh, you might not be much to look at, brat, but you got guts, not to mention quite a mouth on you. You might not be so bad after all, said Reo, as he roughed Naruto's hair a bit, which annoyed Naruto a little. So what are you guys? Naruto asked. We're your Zanpakuto spirits, child, answered the giant white bird named Kochi. Huh, Zanpakuto spirits, but wait, I thought Shinigami could only have one Zanpakuto spirit, stated Naruto, as he remembered what his mother told him about Shinigami. That is incorrect, as Shinigami can have more than one Zanpakuto spirit, but even then, you're a different. For you see, each of us have our own unique powers, separate from one another, explained Watatsumi. Wait, so you mean to say that I have 3 Zanpakuto? Naruto said in surprise. Yes and no, for although we have separate abilities, we all reside in a single vessel, answered Kochi. This is awesome, declared Naruto with excitement at the idea of him having 3 Zanpakuto. So are you guys going to turn into Zanpakuto or something? Tisk. We aren't some mindless tools that will do whatever you want us to do, brat. We have our own will and won't be forced to anything that we don't want to do. If you want us to help, you're going to have to treat us with some respect, said Reo, who was miffed that Naruto thought that he could boss them around. Oh, sorry, said Naruto. It is all right, child, but there is something you need to know. If you truly wish to use our powers, you must first awaken your own Shinigami powers and do so before this world collapses, Kochi explained. What do you mean? Asked a worried Naruto. Look up at the sky, brat, said Reo, as he pointed up, where Naruto saw the large storm clouds covering the sky. That is no ordinary storm, it is being caused by the collapsing our world. Soon enough both this world and all of us will cease to exist and you'll become a hollow. The only way to prevent this is, and that is for you to awaken your Shinigami powers. But how do we do that? Asked Naruto. You must find your Shinigami powers, which takes the shape of your Zanpakuto, said Watatsumi. But where do I find that? Naruto asked, but instead of answering Watatsumi, re-merged with the water. Reo disappeared in a flash of light and Kochi flew away. Where are you guys going? I need your help to find my powers, cried Naruto. After Watatsumi and the others left him, Naruto decided to start looking for his powers, but before he could even try, a gigantic wave suddenly rose out of the sea in front of him. Naruto of course tried to run away, but was quickly enveloped by the massive wave of water. Soon after, Naruto found himself floating underwater and surrounded by thousands of white boxes. Realizing that he was underwater, Naruto immediately started to hold his breath, and started to try and swim upward. But as he tried, he quickly realized that he was going anywhere. What are you doing, Naruto? Have you already forgotten that this is your mind, where it does not matter whether you're underwater or not? Spoke Watatsumi voice out of nowhere. After hearing this, Naruto realized that Watatsumi was right, where he stopped holding his breath and began to breathe normally. After which he started to swim around, opening as many boxes as he could in an attempt to find his Shinigami powers. But every time he opened one of the boxes he found nothing inside. This is impossible. I can't find my Shinigami powers in all these boxes, there are too many of them, stated Naruto. You must, Naruto, or else we are all doomed, spoke Watatsumi in a forceful tone. But how? I'm just one person and there are thousands if not millions of boxes to look through, say Naruto. Naruto, you can do this, but you must first calm yourself and focus, said Kochi's voice out of nowhere, much like Watatsumi. Listening to Kochi's voice, Naruto started to take deep breaths and began to calm down. Now listen to me, Naruto. You must expand your senses. You cannot rely on sight, hearing, or even touch. You must use your own natural spiritual energy to search for your Shinigami power by sensing its spirit-in. RGY. By doing that, you'll be able to find the box that contains your Shinigami power. Following Kochi's instructions, Naruto closed his eyes and began to concentrate and focus on expanding his senses outward to find the box with his Shinigami powers. Within minutes, Naruto located the box, as the spirit energy that emanated from it felt different from the others. Acting quickly, Naruto honed in on the box and swam towards it as quickly as he could. Once he had grabbed hold, Naruto opened it, where he then found an odd-looking sword handle in the box. Good work, Naruto, you found us, said Kochi, but as soon as she said this, a massive black hole appeared from underneath Naruto and began to suck everything in. What the hell are you waiting, kid? Pull us out before you turn into a hollow, yelled Ryo voice. Not needing to be told twice, Naruto grabbed hold of the sword handle and pulled it out of the box. In the outside world, in the real world, Yoruichi and the others watched as Naruto slowly turned into a hollow. As he did, Tessai began to struggle to hold Naruto with his Kido spell. Urahara-san, Yoruichi-sama, I do not know how much longer I can hold him, shouted Tessai. Naruto, don't give in, fight it, cried Yoruichi. It was then, just as the hollow mask had completely covered Naruto's face, a massive explosion of spiritual energy erupted from Naruto, breaking Tessai's Kido spell and forcing Yoruichi and Kazuki to jump back a bit. As they jumped back, they saw something fly out of the pit and land right in front of them. When they looked up, they saw Naruto, wearing the uniform of a Shinigami, along with a hollow mask shaped like a smiling fox, covering his face, too. In his hand was an odd-looking sword handle, which had no blade on it. Before either Kazuki or Yoruichi could say or do anything, the mask around Naruto's face started to crack and fall apart, revealing his face. But as soon as the mask broke, Naruto collapsed onto the ground. Naruto! Cried Yoruichi, as she raced over to her adopted son and knelt down to him and lifted his head onto her knees. Is he all right? Asked Tessai, who had just climbed out of the pit and walked over to them. Yes, should be fine, he just exhausted from the transformation, answered Urahara with a smile. It's truly remarkable that a boy his age was able to withstand and survive the transformation, commented Tessai. I must admit there was a moment or two near the end, where I thought he would turn into a hollow. Yes, well, as Yoruichi said, young Naruto-kun is stronger than he looks, replied Kazuki with a smile. As he watched his female friend smile down at the boy and gently brush some hair strands away from his forehead, in a motherly-like fashion. Several hours later, when Naruto woke up, he found himself lying in a small room staring at white ceiling with a blanket covering him. Well, hello, sleepy head, spoke a familiar voice, where when Naruto turned his head slightly he saw his mother smiling down on him. Ka-chan, said Naruto rather groggily, as he rubbed his eyes to wake himself up. How are you feeling, Naru-chan? Asked Yoruichi. Okay, I guess, but where's Uncle Sandal Hat and Mr. Giant Man? Asked Naruto, who quickly got his answer when the sliding door to the room opened up, revealing Kazuki and Tessai. Right here, Naruto-kun, said Kazuki as he waved his open fan in front of his face. And I must say I am very impressed with how you successfully gained the powers of a Shinigami. Huh, you mean I'm a Shinigami? Said Naruto in surprise as he pulled the blanket off him and found himself wearing the standard uniform of a Shinigami. After which he started to cheer and shout at how he was a Shinigami just like his mother, and how he would now kick loads of hollows' butts. Soon enough though, Yoruichi got Naruto to calm down and asked him to tell them what happened as he was slowly turning into a hollow and how he found his hidden power. For the next few minutes, Naruto went on to explain what happened in his inner world and how he met his 3 Zanpakuto spirits. When he finished, saying that Yoruichi and the others were surprised would have been a grave understatement. 3 separate Zanpakuto spirits in a single Zanpakuto. Yoruichi said out loud with serious look. I have heard Shinigami having dual spirits, especially if they have dual Bale-type Zanpakuto like Yukataki and Kyoraku, but never anything like this. Indeed, this is a rather unusual development. Do you have any theories on this, Urahara-san? Asked Tessai. Well, the only explanation I can come up with is because of the experiments that Nagao-san did not Naruto-kun ancestors to create a Shinigami shinobi hybrid. Then again, Naruto could simply be an even bigger oddity that we had thought. But other than that, I don't have a clue, as there has never been someone like him before. Your son truly in a surprising individual, bohahohaho, remarked Urahara, as opened his fan again and waving it around, as he laughed at his own ignorance, which made Naruto wonder if the man was insane. But why is my Zanpakuto like this? Asked Naruto, as he held up his wooden sword hilt. The hilt design was a simple design with no guard and a slightly large bottom at the end of the hilt with 3 red gems on it. 3. HHHMMMMM. Well, if I understand what you told us correctly, Naruto-kun, even though your Zanpakuto spirits inhabit the same vessel, they each have their own unique powers and independent will. The form that your Zanpakuto has taken now is its sealed form and acts a neutral point for you to choose which spirit's power you wish to use. So you're saying that Naruto cannot use all 3 spirits at once, stated Yoruichi. No, exactly. Now this is only a theory, but I believe the gems on the hilt of his sword handle represent his 3 Zanpakuto spirits and will most likely glow whenever he uses which of them he wishes to use. Now it may or may not be possible at a later point for him to use all 3 at once, but he will most likely have to learn to master all 3 Zanpakuto powers first, before even trying something like that. Quote. After hearing all this, Yoruichi just nodded in understanding before turning to her adopted son, with a sweet-looking smile, that for some reason made Naruto very nervous. Well, Naru-chan, it seems that you'll have a lot of training ahead of you, if you want to learn to use your Zanpakuto. Quote. Upon hearing this, Naruto gulped, as his mother could be quite brutally when it came to training. He became even more worried when both Tessai and Kazuki volunteered to help Naruto with his training. But regardless of what would happen in his training, he had already committed himself to the path of the Shinigami and wouldn't look back. 7 years. Tokyo City. Currently running around the streets of Tokyo in the middle of the night, the spirit of a young woman was frantically searching for an place to hide from the things that were after her. As she ran through the streets, the women turned into a dark alleyway. As she ran through the alley, a large creature suddenly appeared in front of her from above and crash-landed on the ground. When the dust settled from the creature landing on the ground, the woman saw a massive dark-skinned humanoid creature, with a muscular body and white mask shaped like a bull with horns on the side, and a large hole in its chest. Seeing the creature, the woman tried to run back the way she came, but when she turned around she saw 2 more creatures in front of her. Although neither were as big as the first one, they were still quite big, compared to a normal person. The first of the 2 had a similar build as the big one. He had green skin and long gray hair. On his muscular arms, there are 2 spines which were obviously used for combat. His legs were covered in brown fur. His mask had a skull-like appearance and a large horn on top and a hole in his abdomen. The second creature was slightly taller than its partner, with the upper body of a man, with a small hole in its neck and the lower body of a snake. Seeing that she couldn't go back, the woman started to look for any other ways to escape. That was when she saw a spider-like creature crawling down from left and wall. The creature had 6 legs and skull-like face with a hole in it back. Hoo-ha-ha-ha. What a tasty morsel, laughed the spider-like hollow. Yes, she should do nnnnn nicely, said the serpent-like hollow. Please, just leave me alone. I didn't do anything, pleaded the woman, as she pressed her back into the right wall. Don't worry, we won't hurt you much, hoo-ha-ha-ha-ha, said the hollow with the spikes on his arms, as he began to laugh. As the 4 creatures closed in on the woman, the largest of the 4 hollows suddenly let out a massive roar. Ah! Quote. When the other 3 hollows turned, they saw their fellow hollow suddenly split in 2, before disintegrating. What the hell? Cried the spiked-armed hollow. What happened to Oxbone? Asked the serpent-like hollow. I don't know, replied the spike-armed hollow, as he looked around for the perpetrator, where he suddenly noticed something missing. Wait. Where did the woman go? She's up there. Look. Cried the spider-like hollow. When the others looked, they saw the woman up on the roof overlooking the alley, being carried by an average tall person about 5'5", wearing a black hooded coat. Who is that? Asked the spider-like hollow. I don't know, but whoever he is, he's dead, replied the spiked-armed hollow, where they jumped after the mysterious hooded person, who disappeared in a blur. For the next few minutes the 3 hollows chased after the mysterious stranger, jumping across the rooftops of buildings. Until eventually they came to a stop in a large open park with trees all around and a small playground. When the serpent-like hollow and the spiked-armed hollow landed in the open park, they saw the black-clad person place the young woman behind a slide, and tell her to stay there and not to move. After making sure that the woman was safe, the hooded stranger then slowly walked towards the 2 hollows. Once he was only a few meters from them, he then took out a short tonto blade from underneath his black coat. So who's first? Asked the hooded stranger. The serpent hollow was the first to answer this challenge, where he spat out a large glob of mud-like substance, which the hooded stranger avoided by sidestepping to the left, where it flew by him and hit the top corner of a swing, causing it to melt. Seeing this, the hooded stranger made a note to avoid the substance, after which he then charged straight at the 2 hollows. The serpent-like hollow fired several more globs of the acid-like substance at the hooded stranger, but each time the hooded stranger skillfully evaded them. Seeing that his partner was having no luck with hitting the hooded stranger, the spiked-armed hollow charged forward and attempted to stab the hooded person with his arm spike. But before his arm spike could hit the black-clad figure, the mysterious stranger disappeared right before his eyes. He then reappeared right on the hollow's outstretched arm and used it as a springboard to jump over the hollow to his partner behind him, whom the stranger then cut in half, much like their other comrade earlier on. Snakeface, no! Cried the spike-arm hollow after seeing another of his comrades. You pay for that, you bastard! Cried the enraged hollow as he tried to stab the hooded stranger with his spikes. But like before, the hooded stranger avoided the attack, where he sidestepped the stab and with a quick ick of his hand, cutting the hollow's arm right off. Ggggrrraahhhh, my arm! Roared the hollow in pain, as he held his now right stump of an arm. Before he could say or do anything more, the hooded stranger then delivered a powerful kick to the face that cracked the hollow's mask slightly and sent him flying several meters away. But as soon as the hooded stranger landed back on the ground, the woman he was protecting suddenly shouted out, "Look out!" Before the black-clad stranger could fully turn around, the spider-like hollow suddenly appeared out of the ground, and ran one of his claw-like hands right through the hooded stranger's back and out his chest. Hey, I got yo huh! Laughed the spider-like hollow before a look of surprise and confusion appeared of its face, as the black-clad fighter faded away. When this happened, the hooded fighter reappeared behind the spider-like hollow and said, "Yutsusemi cicada," before he raised his tonto and sliced the top portion of the hollow's head off, where the rest of its body quickly disintegrated. Damn you! Roared the spiked-armed hollow. First oxbone, then snakeface and now web, I kill you. You're welcome to try, replied the hooded stranger with a smirk, before he and the spike-armed hollow charged at one another with phenomenal speed. To the woman that was watching the two of them fight, it ended as quickly as it had started. As both the hollow and her mysterious savior disappeared within the blink of an eye, and reappeared at opposite ends from where they started, with their backs to one another. For a moment or two neither of them moved, until the mysterious stranger asked the hollow's name, where the hollow simply replied, Swardarm, before a long diagonal cut appeared, going down from his left shoulder to his right hip. This caused the top right part of his body to slide off the rest of his body, along with the top portion of his head, which was cut off as well from another slash. Once the last of the hollows was dealt with, the hooded stranger sheathed his tanto back into its sheath on his right leg. After which he slowly walked over to the woman, who was still hiding behind the slide. You can come out now, you're safe, spoke the hooded stranger calmly. Are you sure? Asked the woman as she slowly came out from behind the slide. Yes, I am, replied the hooded stranger, where he then took out an unusual-looking sword handle, with 3 red gems on the bottom hilt. What are you doing? Asked the woman with some fear. Don't worry, I am not going to hurt you, I just sending you to a place where you will be safe and can move on, said the hooded stranger. After which he tapped the bottom hilt of his sword handle onto the woman's forehead, where she was teleported away to the afterlife. Once the woman was gone, the hooded stranger placed his sword handle onto his belt. But before he could walk away, he suddenly heard some clapping. Hearing the clapping, the hooded fighter immediately readied himself for an attack, since he didn't sense anyone, until the person had started clapping. Well done indeed. Those hollows never stood a chance, spoke the man coming out of the shadows of the trees, wearing a green and white striped bucket hat. Uncle Hat in clogs, said the hooded stranger, as he pulled back his hood to show his face, revealing his spiky blonde hair, blue eyes and faint whisker-shaped marks on his cheeks, which could just barely be seen. It's good to see you too, Naruto. You have improved a great deal since I last saw you, said Kazuki. Not enough, if I still can't sense you, said Naruto, with a slight smile. So what is it that you want? Oh come now Naruto-kun, you make it sound like I'm always up to something. Can't I come to visit the son of an old friend every now and again? Said Kazuki as he waved his fan in denial. You're always up to something, Uncle Kazuki. Plus it hasn't long since Ka-chan left to visit you, so I know there's something up, Naruto answered. At this Kazuki just smiled and spent the next hour or so explaining why he was here. So let me get this straight. You've helped this Ichigo guy gain the powers of a Shinigami and helped these 2 other people to use their special powers. After which you then sent them, along with Ka-chan and a Quincy, to storm the Soul Society to rescue this Rukia person, who was going to be executed for transferring her Shinigami powers to Ichigo earlier on. You got it. That pretty much the whole story, replied Kazuki, before he was knocked to the ground by a punch in the face by the young Shinigami. Ow, 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 ooh oh oh www, why did you punch me in the face? Whined Urahara as he held his face in pain. That's for not telling me all this sooner, annoyed Naruto as he was peeved that he was kept in the dark about all this. Gomenasi Naruto-kun, but we were rather busy with training Kurosaki-kun and the others that we didn't have time to see ga, said Kazuki before he received another fist to the face from Naruto. My nose, cried the whimpering man as he held his nose in pain. Don't give me any that crap, all you had to do was make a simple call, text or email, hell even a letter or carrier pigeon would have done the job, stated the angry Naruto. I'm not stupid, Uncle Kazuki, this is all Ka-chan's doing, she doesn't want me on this mission, because she's afraid I go after Aizen or the others. At this Kazuki just sighed and picked himself up. Yes, Naruto-kun, you're correct. I had originally wanted to bring you in from the start. But your mother told me not to, given your strong dislike of the Soul Society and Aizen for what happened to us. Quote. At this Naruto just scoffed, as he never made it secret about dislike of the Soul Society or Aizen. Since it was because of Aizen that his mother was forced to go into exile, after he framed Kazuki and Tessai for his crimes. He also disliked the Soul Society, since he found their ruling government Central 46 to be ignorant, arrogant, inflexible, and heartless, especially when it came to their so-called laws, many of which Naruto found to be unjust. He even disliked the Shinigami of the Soul Society, since he found many of them to be nothing more than mindless lapdogs, doing whatever their masters tell them. So if Ka-chan told you not to bring me in on this rescue mission, why are you here and telling me all this? Asked Naruto. Well, to put it simply, despite what your mother thinks, I believe the mission has the best chance of succeeding with you there to help, explained Urahara. Naruto of course just smirked at this. You do know that when Ka-chan finds out what you did, she'll kill you. Quote. At this Kazuki just waved his fan and laughed nervously, as he hadn't missed that fact. Yes, he. Perhaps when you meet your mother, you could say that you forced it out of me or something. Naruto just smiled at this, where the two of them left the park together with Ichigo and the others. After their failed attempt in entering Seraite, Yoruichi brought Ichigo and the gang to Kukaku's house and introduced them to her. After convincing Kukaku to help them, Kukaku showed them how she would help them get into the Seraite. It didn't take long for Ryu, Chad and Oraime to learn how to create the force fields they would need to help them get through the Seraite barrier. Unfortunately, Ichigo wasn't having as much luck, as he struggled to learn how to create and form the force field. After finishing their dinner, Chad, Oraime and Ryu came back to the training room to watch Ichigo as he tried to form his force field. As they watched Ichigo continue with his training, they suddenly heard some screaming coming from outside the room. Believing they were under attack, Ichigo and the others readied themselves for battle. As soon as they did, a beaten-up Ganju flew through the door and right into Ichigo, who was sent flying into the wall right behind him, along with Ganju. When Ryu and the others turned to the now broken door, they saw a dark hooded stranger standing in the doorway. Who the hell are you? Asked the Ryu as he pointed his Quincy bow at the unknown figure, who had now walked into the room. Oh, Akuna-see, looks like I found the right place, commented the hooded stranger before he looked over at Ichigo, who was still seeing stars after Ganju collided with him. Aw, sorry about that. Didn't mean to hit you there, the hooded person apologized. I believe I asked you a question, now tell us who? Asked Ryu with the utmost seriousness. My, aren't we the impatient one? Commented the hooded stranger, before he pulled back his hood to reveal his blonde spiky hair and his face, revealing him to be Naruto. Relax there, Four Eyes. I'm not here to fight, in fact I'm here to help you. I find that hard to believe, given what you just did to Ganju there, answered Ryu. Him? Asked Naruto as he looked over at the still dazed Ganju, who was on top of Ichigo. That's his own fault. When I arrived here and met him at the front door, he stopped me from going in. Even after I explained that I was a friend and that I was here to see someone, he refused to let me in. He then went on to blab about how punk Shinigami like me weren't welcome here, and how he was the #1 Shinigami hater, as well as say some rather hurtful things. You're a Shinigami? Asked Ryu with a frown. I am, but I'm not with the Seraite, so you don't have to worry, replied Naruto. Ryu was of course not convinced by this, but before he could ask Naruto any more questions, Naruto disappeared and reappeared right in front of Chad and Oraime. Naturally, both Orihime and Chad were shocked by Naruto's sudden appearance in front of them, where they took a step back in surprise. Even Ryu was surprised by Naruto's speed, where all he could think was, fast. Quote, "Damn, you're a big one," commented Naruto as he looked up at Chad with a raised eyebrow, before he turned to Orihime, where his eyebrows rose even higher, when he stared at Orihime's curvy figure, but more specifically at her chest. As Naruto stared at Orihime's chest, the orange-haired girl started to feel uncomfortable at how Naruto was staring at her chest. But before Orihime could say anything, Naruto lifted up his finger and moved to poke the girl's chest. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" cried the red-faced Quincy, when he saw what Naruto was going to do. "What?" asked Naruto in confusion, as didn't understand why Ryu was so upset. "I'm just seeing if they're for real, it's not perverted or anything." Quote, "That is perverted," cried Ryu in outrage. "You can't just pee poke a girl like that." "Hey, I just curious, that's all, since the girl has a figure and that most women would kill for," responded Naruto. This of course caused Ryu to go even redder in embarrassment at the mention of Orihime's figure. Chad on the other hand just looked away, although had a slight blush on his face as well. "But hey, listen, do any of you guys know where my mo ga?" Naruto asked, but before he could finish, he was suddenly pulled away from the others by Ichigo, who grabbed Naruto by the front collar of his coat and lifted him up, so that he looked Naruto right in the face. "One. You bastard. I should beat the shit out of you for that," cried the angry Ichigo. "Oh hey kid," greeted Naruto. "Sorry again about that. I didn't mean to hit you with that idiot. No hard feelings." "No hard feelings," Ichigo said angrily. "You slammed me into a wall and who the air you calling kid? You're shorter than me, shrimp." "No you idiot. Don't make fun of his height," cried Ganju, who was covered in lumps and bruises, as when he met Naruto, he had made fun of Naruto by calling him shorty. Needless to say, Naruto didn't take that comment well, where he proceeded to beat the shit out of Ganju, along with Koganehiko and Shiroganehiko, who tried to stop Naruto. Sadly though for Ichigo it was too late, as once he called Naruto shrimp, an evil-looking glint appeared in the blonde boy's eyes. He then grabbed Ichigo's right arm, which he was using to hold Naruto up, and twisted, forcing Ichigo to let go of him. The next thing Ichigo knew, he was on the floor, with Naruto standing over him, digging his left heel into his lower back, while holding Ichigo's arm in an arm lock, twisting it every few seconds, causing intense pain to the young Shinigami both in his arm and in his lower back. "How do you like that now, huh?" asked Naruto with a sadistic smile on his face as he heard Ichigo scream in pain. "Who's the short one now? And as for calling you kid, you may think you're a big shot with your big sword there. But you're nothing more than a greenhorn to me, since I've trained for years in my power, and as far as I'm concerned you nothing more than a brat." This of course continued for the next few minutes, where Naruto continued to torture Ichigo until Yoruichi and Kukaku arrived. "What the is going on in here?" cried Kukaku, when she saw the scene. Naruto of course just looked up and smiled, when he saw his mother, who was in her cat form, and Kaku, where he simply said, "Yo," and waved his hand in greeting. "Naruto, what are you doing here?" asked Yoruichi in surprise. "I came to help, as do you really think I would let you invade the Seraite without me and have all the fun?" replied Naruto with a grin. "I would hardly call invading Seraite fun," spoke Ryu, as he pushed his glasses back up. "Maybe not you, but I sure as hell think it would be," answered Naruto with a grin. "How did you know about this? Did Kazuki tell you?" asked Yoruichi. "Yep," replied Naruto as he twisted Ichigo's arm again, causing Ichigo to cry out in pain. "Uncle Hat and Clogs told me, since he thought the mission would have a better chance of succeeding if I helped as well." Yoruichi was of course not surprised by this, as she had already guessed that Kazuki was the one who told Naruto, since he was the only one who could have brought Naruto here. After she realized this, the former captain of Squad 2 made a mental note to kill her childhood friend. With Kazuki currently writing some notes on his newest experiment, the former captain of Squad 12 suddenly sneezed and then moaned, as his notes were now covered in snot. "Something wrong, boss?" asked Tessai, when heard Urahara sneeze. "I don't think so. I just sneezed. Perhaps a beautiful maiden is talking about me," said Kazuki with a cheesy smile, believing his own lie. "Like that'll ever happen," thought Tessai. "Well, don't worry, boss, I have some excellent medicine that will clear that cold up in no time." Kazuki of course tried to stop Tessai, saying that it wasn't a cold, it was just a sneeze. But his attempts fell on deaf ears, where Kazuki would be spending the next couple of hours in the bathroom with Naruto and the others. "And may I ask what you are doing with Ichigo?" asked Yoruichi, already guessing what happened. "I'm just showing Strawberry here the difference between him and me," replied Naruto, as he dug his heel once more into Ichigo's back, causing the orange hair boy to scream in pain. "He made fun of your height, didn't he?" asked Yoruichi with a sweat drop on the side of her head, where Ryu and the others nodded their heads, telling her that Ichigo done so. "Yoruichi, who the is this kid?" Kukaku asked. "I believe you remember the topic of our earlier conversation," replied Yoruichi, where Kukaku eyes widened briefly, when she remembered it. "So that him, huh?" asked Kukaku, where Yoruichi just nodded. "Naruto, please let Ichigo go, as we don't have the time for this sort of thing," said Yoruichi. Naruto of course did what his mother asked and let Ichigo go and allowed him to get back, where the two of them glared at one another. "Excuse me, Yoruichi-san, but who exactly is this person?" asked Ryu. "This is Naruto. He is an ally, and like you, Ichigo, he is Shinigami as well as a shinobi," replied Yoruichi, as she kept the part about Naruto being her son a secret. "A shinobi?" repeated Chad, as he wasn't sure how to respond to that. "Wait, you mean, like all those cool black suit-wearing guys in the movies, who live in shadows and attack people?" answered Orihime with excitement. As she knew a lot about shinobi, from all the martial arts films that she watched with Tatsuki. "Not exactly. You see, Naruto here comes from another world which is parallel to yours. In this world, the shinobi are very different and much more powerful than those you would see in movies. For you see, the shinobi of Naruto's world use a unique power called chakra, which grants them powers and abilities that rival those of a Shinigami," answered Yoruichi. Naturally, after hearing this, Ichigo and the others were surprised, but they quickly recovered, where Ryu decided to ask a question. "If this is true, then why have we never seen or heard of these shinobis before? As I said, Naruto's world is separate from us and is unaware of the Soul Society existence. The only reason Naruto is here is because he has the powers of a Shinigami," explained Yoruichi. "Okay, fine, I get that. But if that's the case, why the hell didn't you mention him sooner? And why did you want him to stay out of this mission?" Ichigo asked. "I am afraid I can't answer that question right now, Ichigo, but I can assure you there was a good reason why I wanted Naruto to remain hid." Replied Yoruichi. After which she then gave her son a glance, who just nodded, stating he understood why she kept him in the dark about their mission to save Rukia. Annoyed slightly by not getting any answers, Ichigo turned to Naruto. "So are you strong?" Quote, "Strong enough," replied Naruto. "Well then, how about you and I go at it here and now and see how strong you really are," said Ichigo with an evil-looking grin as he pulled his sword out, as he was eager to deal some payback on Naruto. "Your funeral?" retorted Naruto with his own grin. Kurosaki-kun, I don't think you should fight here," spoke Orihime worriedly. "Don't worry, Orihime, this won't take long," replied Ichigo as he readied himself. "That it won't," said Naruto as he took out his Tonto sword from the sheath on his right leg. "The two of them are too much alike," commented Ryu with annoyance, where Chad just nodded in agreement. "That enough?" Both of you. There will be no fighting here, spoke Yoruichi seriously, as this wasn't the time or the place for this sort of thing. Ichigo, listen to me, if you want to save Rukia, we'll need Naruto's help, and I can assure you Naruto is quite powerful and is someone you want as an ally. Since both Kazuki and I trained Naruto, now I suggest you stand down. That goes for you as well, Naruto. Upon hearing this, Ichigo relented, since technically Kazuki was the one who trained him, and if Naruto succeeded in surviving his training, then that meant Naruto had to be strong. Chad and Orihime were also convinced, since Yoruichi was the one who trained them in how to use their powers, and if Yoruichi said Naruto was strong, they believed it. Once Ichigo placed his sword back onto his back, Naruto sheathed his Tonto blade. Since he knew his mother was right, this wasn't the time or place to fight. Once both boys agreed to stand down, Naruto offered his hand in friendship to Ichigo, which he took. Yoruichi was of course pleased to see this, since together the two boys would be a force to be reckoned with. Several hours later, a few hours after Naruto arrived, Ichigo was finally able to create the force field around himself. But not before nearly destroying Kukaku home, resulting in her beating the crap out of Ichigo and her brother Ganju, who told Ichigo what to do. Once everyone was ready, the group entered the spirit cannon and formed a large force field around himself and were fired through the barrier the Protect. Ted the Seraite. Unfortunately, when they broke though the barrier, they were unable to hold the force field together and were separated from one another. Naruto was of course able to land on the ground without incident, but found himself alone, with no sign of the others nearby. So this is the Seraite, huh? Commented Naruto after he jumped up to the top of the nearest building to have a good look around his surroundings. Well, look what we have here, commented an unknown male voice. When the Naruto turned around, he saw two Shinigami standing behind at the opposite end of the rooftop that he was standing on. And here I thought today was going to be another dull day, remarked one of the Shinigami. The first was of the Shinigami was a tall and noticeably muscular man with pale skin, short spiky black hair, brown eyes, who wore bandages like a mask over the bottom half of his face. He carried a long zanpakuto on his back and wore the standard uniform of a Shinigami, with its sleeves seemingly torn of F, showing his muscular arms. The second was a feminine-looking Shinigami, who Naruto wasn't sure was a boy or a girl. The Shinigami was slightly taller than Naruto and had long black hair, pale skin and large, dark brown eyes. The Shinigami had a slender frame and wore the stand Shinigami uniform and carried a short zanpakuto on his right-left side hip. Oh, and who are you? Asked Naruto calmly as he analyzed his two opponents, where he could tell that they seated officers given the spiritual pressure they were emanating. The name is Momochi Zabuza, 4th seat of Squad 11, replied the man named Zabuza as he drew his zanpakuto. I am Yuki Haku, 5th seat of Squad 4, answered Haku. So 4th and 5th seat officers, this should be interesting, thought Naruto, as he was sure they could both prove to be an interesting challenge. Although he did wonder why a seated officer from Squad 11 was hanging around with a seated officer from Squad. Since he had heard that the members of Squad 11 detested those from Squad 4, believing that they were cowardly weaklings who got in the way. Now, if you could be so kind, will you tell us why you're here? Haku asked the black hooded teen. To put simply, I'm here with some others to help save a Shinigami who was to be executed, a Kuchiki Rukia. Quote. At hearing this, both Zabuza and Haku rose their eyebrows in surprise, since they had heard of the execution of the female Shinigami, who was said to be executed for giving a living human the powers of a Shinigami. Are you friends with Rukia-san? Asked Haku, who had met the female Shinigami once or twice and found her to be a friendly individual. No, never met her in my life, replied Naruto. Then why the hell are you even coming to save her? Zabuza asked, since it didn't make any sense to him. I'm doing this as a favor for someone, answered Naruto. And because it will piss off the top brass of the Seraite, he explained with a smirk. Well, unfortunately, you won't have that chance, kid, since you had the bad luck of running into us. But you still have two choices. We can do this the easy way, or the hard way, said Zabuza, as he readied his Zanpakuto. Since he was hoping Naruto would choose the hard way, as like all members of Squad 11 he was itching for a good fight. Naruto of course did not disappoint him, as he drew his tanto from his leg sheath and readied himself. Sorry, but I guess we're going to have to do this the hard way. I was hoping you would say that, replied Zabuza with a grin behind his mask. Haku, you stay out of this. I will, Zabuza-sama, replied the young boy, knowing that like the rest of the members of Squad 11 Zabuza preferred to fight his battles alone. Before the battle could begin, Naruto suggested that they jump down to the ground, where they would have more room to fight. Zabuza of course had no problem with this, where the two of them jumped down to the ground, while Haku stayed up on the roof to watch the fight. As Zabuza and Naruto faced off against one another, both Shinigami readied themselves and began to emanate large amounts of spiritual pressure. Watching from the rooftop, Haku was impressed with the spiritual pressure that the unknown intruder was emanating. Since the amount that intruder was emanating was easily stronger than most lieutenants in the Seraite. HMPH. Not bad, brat. You might actually be a challenge, so tell me, what's your name? Sorry, but I don't give my name out to just anyone, but if you want to call me by something, call me Ro. Gyu, replied Naruto. Well, aren't we the mysterious one? Commented Zabuza with a slight smirk underneath his mask. Not that it matters, as I'll just carve that name on your tombstone, when I'm finished with you. Quote, you're welcome to try, answered Naruto with a slight smirk. As soon as Naruto said this, Zabuza disappeared within the blink of an eye and reappeared right behind Naruto, where he attempted to slash the young Shinigami in the back. But before Zabuza's sword could cut Naruto, the hood-wearing boy disappeared and reappeared opposite Zabuza, a few meters from him. He dodged it, thought Zabuza in mild surprise, he's pretty fast. After dodging Zabuza's strike, Naruto then went on the offensive, where he disappeared and reappeared right in front of Zabuza with his tanto sword raised above his head. Acting quickly, Zabuza raised his Zanpakuto up to block Naruto's attack, where he then pushed Naruto back. Huda disappeared again and reappeared behind Zabuza and attempted to stab him in the back with his tanto. Zabuza of course avoided the stab by jumping forward, after glancing Naruto at the corner of his eye. For the next few minutes Zabuza was put on the defensive by Naruto, who used his superior speed to attack Zabuza from different directions. It was only thanks to the experience he gained from the many years of fighting both as a Shinigami and when he was alive, that he was able to block Naruto's CKS in time. After blocking another of Naruto's strikes, Zabuza pushed Naruto back and charged forward in attempt to slash him. But like before, Naruto skillfully avoided or blocked Zabuza's strikes. Not bad, brat. You've got some skill, complimented Zabuza, as he and Naruto continued to trade attacks. You're pretty fast, and your reactions are good, not to mention your attacks are nothing to sneeze at. Quote, thanks, you're not so bad yourself, replied Naruto after he deflected another of Zabuza's strikes, where for several more minutes the two of them continued to trade blows. Eventually though, the two of them broke apart and jumped several meters away from one another. Tell me something, brat, who was your sensei? Since you've been obviously trained by someone skilled, asked Zabuza. Actually I had 3 senseis and one of them was my mother, answered Naruto. Oh, and who was your mother? Asked Zabuza with some curiosity. Sorry, but like my name, theirs is on a need to know and you don't need to know, replied the hooded boy. After hearing Naruto's response, Zabuza frowned slightly, but quickly let it go, since it didn't matter to him much. Fine, keep your secrets, but I suggest you prepare yourself, since we're going to the next level, where the fourth seated officer cried out, "Slice, Shoki, Demon Slayer." Upon which Zabuza's sword changed shape and turned into an oversized knife with a single-edged two. The sword itself reminded Zabuza of his old sword Kubikiribocho, decapitating carving knife, which he wielded back when he was alive in the shinobi world. Before he was killed at Nami no Kuni, Wave Country, during his battle with Hitaki Kakashi and his team. That's a pretty big sword you have there. Although you do know what they say about guys with big swords, stated Naruto with a smile as he held up his left hand, wiggled his pinky finger. Growling at Naruto's remark, Zabuza rose his Zanpakuto, then swung it in a downward angle, while crying out, "Oh! Nikiri, demon slash. A."